Well, before we kick off this episode, I got to tell you, Nature Bee have come up with something dangerous. Their new Power Bee Bite Bars. Chocolate caramel or peanut honey choc chip. They taste so good, you're going to forget they're healthy. Packed with protein, boosted with power pollen, they're perfect for the road, perfect for the shed, perfect for the man cave, perfect anytime you need a quick lift. And they're paired beautifully with your daily power pollen capsules to create the ultimate wellness routine. Links are in the description right now, but stick around, I'll tell you more.
Luke's on the desk, pushing long bloody knobs. Blames the glitch bitch instead of doing his job. Kels rolls her eyes, says, mate, just shut up. She runs this whole circus while he drinks from his cup. But you let him stick around through Luke's chilly meltdowns and his bulletproof.
Well, g'day and welcome to the very first instalment of BONA'S. Backburner. Burner. Can we put some special effects? BONA'S.
You don't need to do the effects if we're putting effects on them.
BONA'S. Backburner. Now, if you were listening last week, you'll know I've nicked off on holiday to Bali, sitting here sweating like a sinner in a church. Icy cold Bintang Pilsner. Nikki will have the Bintang Crystal. The millennial will keep the lights on back home. So we're not leaving you high and dry. We've been doing this pod for a while now. So with so many new bona fides jumping on board, we figured it'd be a good time to dust off some of the classics. Yarns that are too bloody good to stay buried, Kelsey.
Yes.
And today, yes. Put effects on your yes.
Yes.
Okay, just to impress me. Today we're going big. Dr. Karl couldn't pick just one of his chats, so we're chucking in the lot. Faster than light travel, life on other planets, the Fermi paradox. Makes my brain hurt, all of this. But Dr. Karl's got that magic of making science sound fun. He's been flat out lately with his own pod, Shirtloads of Science, because you know he always wears a Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I love his Hawaiian shirt.
I know, they're the best.
Yeah. So he'll be back with us down the track. Back to Shirtloads of Science, though. Recently on the podcast, he explored the science behind online conspiracy groups, and I think we should get Adam onto it. Listen to this.
You make a point here. These online conspiracy groups fulfill a genuine human need.
We started looking into what is the misinformation ecosystem. And what we found is that most of our conspiracy theories located into topical groups. Within the groups, what we observed is that information that flows inside the group is only information which is aligned with the group existing beliefs. All the talks and the discussions we see are containing our skewed and biased or pre-existing worldviews. We are only fed this type of views. We are shielded from the alternative views. Add to it the fact that depending on the age group, up to half of the population actually consumes news from social media from within these groups. These groups can actually disconnect completely from reality because those groups, they give users a place to express themselves. They give them validation.
They're not alone.
They are not alone.
They're with a group of peers.
Yes, and we all need that. We need a social connection. These groups provide for these individuals these essential needs, of course, at the expense of the information.
Surely that could mean that with constant reinforcement, the rabbit hole gets deeper.
It does.
It does.
It does, and it doesn't end there. Enter now the algorithms of the platforms.
Yeah, that's Dr. Karl talking to Marian Andre Rizui, who is an associate professor and head of the Behavioural Data Science Lab at the University of Technology, Sydney. And what he's doing there is he's drawing on a 3-year research project into the misinformation ecosystem. He basically is revealing that online conspiracies aren't just about false facts. Instead, they meet deep human needs for belonging and identity.
Yeah, they're kind of talking about the confirmation bias there, where you only seek out information that confirms your own bias. So you'll ignore a news article that says one thing, instead you'll go scounging in the depths of the internet to find a news article that confirms what you believe.
Confirmation bias. I'll give you an example of that, Kelsey. When I went to buy your mum's car, and she'd never ever seen a Lexus NX 300H before, let alone in the colour. As soon as I bought it for her, she saw them everywhere. Now, they were always there.
That's not confirmation bias.
Kinda
That's just...
is.
No.
So what is confirmation bias?
What I just said to you, it's confirmation bias is the act of seeking out information that aligns with your own bias and ignoring information that doesn't, even if that information is true.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And I'm a huge consumer of documentaries, as you know. But I deliberately try and find, because not all documentaries are documentaries. A documentary is supposed to be a presentation of a fact.
Yeah, facts,
told in the story or using...
Or observation. It can just be observation as well.
But a lot of what I watch is biased.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a documentary at all. It's someone's opinion presented as a documentary.
Yeah, well,
and people find it easy to believe.
Well, that's also the issue that we have with AI, right? Because all the information that we give AI is written by someone, right? So AI itself is innately biased as well, because it's only gets fed information that somebody else has written, and everybody is biased in some way or another. So it's about recognizing your bias and being able to, welcome in new information and be okay when your bias is challenged.
Sure. And there's plenty of media outlets which are biased. I mean,
of course.
You look at, for example, Sky News. Far right.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to listen to Peter Credlin or Andrew Bolt or whatever, you'll be drawn to that because it confirms your bias anyway.
Yes.
I was right all along. Look at that. It's on the telly.
Yes.
Here's an article on Daily Mail.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'll be drawn to that because it reassures me that I'm right.
Yes.
But you're not actively searching for another point of view because that makes you uncomfortable.
Exactly. So that's why, there's a lot of, I think there needs to be more education done around reading a wide variety of sources, right? I never look at, especially with some news stories, right? It's really hard to dispute the facts, right? But when it comes to particular topics, I always make sure to look at different media outlets are saying about it, because the truth is always somewhere in the middle when it comes to more societal or political issues,
Well, I've got to tell you something I saw. You know how I'm a regular participant in Hot Topics on Channel 7 Sunrise? Yeah. I was watching Tuesdays last couple of weeks ago, and James Willis from the Daily Telegraph News Limited was on, and the other guest was Amanda Rose. And they were talking about the hostage release and what Trump had done in the Middle East. And obviously Amanda Rose has no time for Trump. And she said something which I thought was unbelievably outrageous. She says that Trump could have done it sooner, but he deliberately waited for Gaza to be destroyed so it would be easier to redevelop it. I couldn't believe it. James challenged her and said, I find that offensive. Yeah, there is so much wrong with Donald Trump, it hurts me. But he's done a good job on this.
Yeah. He will never be able to get away from conspiracy theories like that because
he encourages them.
He has done some pretty where are the Epstein files? We still don't have them.
And his tariffs are killing America. All of that. And it's okay to grab a woman on the pussy. I know. His words. God, the guy's a monster.
I know.
And he does have a God complex, but most
men do.
I think Margaret Thatcher did. So there are plenty of leaders that have a God complex. But what I thought she said was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's very distasteful.
The story should have been how emotional it was and how great it is to have those hostages home.
Absolutely. There's a time and a place, and that definitely was not the time and the place. And I think we've got to give credit where credit is due and take the wins. That doesn't mean that we can't question things that he's done that are questionable, but there's a time and a place.
But a lot of people don't like to question. They like to stay in their comfort zone, Kelson, and they don't want to be challenged. They find
you could fall into that category.
No, I told you I deliberately looked for the other side of the story. We've just been through this.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on?
You always say that when you get challenged.
We're running out of time, Kelsey. My producer's winding me up. Now, look, there's a million articles written about Dr. Karl, and for very good reason. The bloke is a freak at what he does, and he can take the big brainy stuff and explain it so that mugs like me can actually understand it. But here's the thing. I reckon he's even better at sniffing out the stuff people actually give a toss about. Let's be honest, not everyone's into science, but Dr. Karl's got this knack of making you interested, even if you couldn't tell spectroscopy from spaghetti. I mean, that's his talent, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is what I came across the other day. Why scientist Dr. Karl wants all Aussies to be walking backwards.
It's a very Dr. Karl subject.
Oh, he loves this. He won a Nobel Peace Prize for why belly button fluff is blue.
Yeah. No, it was the opposite of a Nobel. It's like a funny science prize.
Right. Yeah.
But look, essentially, this one is saying that retroambulation strengthens the muscles on the front of your thighs and the muscles on the back of your buttocks.
Gluteus maximus.
Yes, and it puts less of a load on the knee joint on the inside and the back, so you don't get any extra pain there. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe we'll all be walking around backwards soon.
Maybe we will. Kelsey, you've come across one?
Yes, so I came across an article where it was talking about how Dr. Karl was on, he does his thing on Triple J radio, and somebody called in asking why one of their nostril is blocked, right? And this is something I struggle with. I constantly have one nostril that's blocked. I have been to doctors about this before, right? Let me just ask you this, Luke. What do you think the nose and the sexual organs have in common?
They both use erectile tissue.
You've read the article.
I know. I've done this already on air with Dr. Karl on Triple M.
Oh, bull. Okay.
And that's why when Pinocchio read Playboy, his nose just got bigger and bigger.
Ha, 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 ha. So, yes, okay. Well, just to then re-familiarise you with it. So, Dr. Karl explained that the reason it feels like one side of your nose is blocked and struggling whilst the other is congested and unpleasant is down to nasal anatomic makeup. Erectile tissue in your nose is on a constant cycle that helps with the flow of nasal air and your sense of smell. Essentially, your nostrils divide the workload. Throughout the day, one nostril breathes, allowing the other time off, switching every few hours. Luke, I have literally been to doctors about this. I have had my head scanned and not one doctor has ever...
Could find anything inside.
Hey, no, no one's ever told me this before. No one's ever said, hey, it's like kind of normal if one nose is blocked.
Do you know what they reckon? When you sneeze, it's a very similar experience to an orgasm. Have you read that? Google it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you're right.
And I got a mate of mine, and I sneezed one day, and he goes, "You lucky bastard." The back burner, bona fide. Let's get into it. Folks, when I was doing the night shift on the Triple M network, one of the really lucky things I was able to do was talk regularly with a bloke that's become a good mate. It's Dr. Karl Krzyzewski. And he's written so many books, 48, I think, with 49 under the biro. And this one here, which I'm holding up now, is a cracker. And it's a story about Dr. Karl. It's called A Periodic Tale, My Sciencey Memoir. And when I first saw the cover, I watched it, I was looking at it from a little bit of a distance, and my eyes, I didn't have my glasses, and I thought it said My Scientology Memoir, and I got a bit worried about him. But no, it's a story of Dr. Karl, and it's fascinating. He came here, the only child of a Holocaust survivor, or Holocaust survivors, who they fled to Australia in 1950. Karl has always forged his own destiny. Before he became one of the world's favourite scientific storytellers, he is a very good storyteller. He's done everything. He got his start as a physicist at the Port Kembla Steelworks. He promptly joined the Steel Industries Auto Club. He raced modified rally cars on Wollongong's deserted back roads. He told me some time ago that he was even at one point described as a drug-crazed hippie. He made a living as a long-haired, dope-smoking taxi driver. He even applied to NASA as an astronaut in the 1980s, but he failed. But he's gone on to forge himself a wonderful career in the media because he is a great storyteller and he's a funny bloke, and there's not much he doesn't know about. Dr. Karl is the person you want to take with you to a trivia night. although it does take him a long time sometimes to give you the answer. And I think at most trivia nights, they have a stopwatch. So it gives me great pleasure to say, continuing our friendship, our relationship, and our fact-swapping conversations, Dr. Karl Kruszenicki, welcome to Bonafide with Luke Boner.
Dr. Luke, Bonafide.
You like that?
Bonafide, fidelity, honesty, truth. So that's good truth. Is that the name of it?
That's right. That's right. You remember back in the day when you couldn't get a drink on a Sunday, and the only way to get a drink was to drive from your locality to another locality, and you had to present your license to show that you were a bona fide traveller. You remember that?
Yeah, and so the only way you could drive on the roads on a Sunday was if you were drunk.
Exactly.
You had to be drunk to drive.
But you had to
go
be
to a pub. Okay, not quite. I've stretched the word. Okay, look, I would call that a bit of slight disinformation on my part, and I apologise for that.
But that's not what you do. You don't give disinformation. You offer us information, and well thought out and well researched information. Dr. Karl, thank you for joining us here on the Bonafide, or Bonafide with Luke Boner, and the first of hopefully many chats. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but just quickly, a periodic tale, Dr. Karl Kruszenicki. It's a great yarn. You've lived and are still living a fascinating life. How long did it take you to put this one together? Because a lot of your other books are a lot shorter. This is quite dynamic.
It took me 3 years because the main problem was I was very embarrassed about writing about myself. I'm very happy to say, hey, black holes have no size, and there are some trees that actually benefit from being hit by lightning, and we are getting closer to being able to understand life and how it arose out of a bunch of chemicals. That I'm happy to talk about, but to say, here's a story about me, give me some money, read it. By the way, it's written about me, by me, telling me how wonderful I am, see you later, bye. I feel a bit embarrassed about that.
No, but don't be embarrassed. Do not be embarrassed. It's a great yarn. I've got to talk to you about some things we have covered, but my new listeners may not know. Mm-hmm. One is you won a Nobel Peace Prize for discovering why belly button fluff was blue.
Not quite. It wasn't a Nobel Prize. It was an Ig Nobel Prize, which is given for research that cannot or should not be done. And it wasn't for peace. It was for the category of interdisciplinary research. So it's a sort of a send-up of the Nobel Prizes, something that makes you laugh and learn. And yes, I did in fact win it for my groundbreaking research into belly button fluff and why it's almost always blue. And as an example of something that makes you sort of stop and look or laugh and learn, there was an Ig Nobel Prize given for an estimation of the force required to drag sheep across various surfaces.
Yes.
And you're thinking, how can that possibly benefit anybody? Yeah. And it was actually to do with sheep shearers who have to work at an angle shearing the sheep and then have to take the sheep here and there. And if the surface that they're working on, the floor, is slightly inclined, it makes it easy to drag the sheep here and there. And also it's not that bad for the sheep. I don't think it makes it worse for the sheep, and it makes it better for the humans. And so it was actually sort of like an occupational health paper, but it had a funny title.
See, you're changing the world. You're changing the world. But the other interesting, and it's a condition you have, and I'll get you to explain it, you don't recognise faces. Explain this.
No, they kind of look like bricks in a wall. Like there's this face and that face, and there's this brick and that brick, and they look the same. And I really came aware of it first when I was in first year medicine. As a mature age student, two of my fellow students who were younger than me came up to me and said, "Hi, gay Karl." I said, "Hi." And they said, "What's my name?" This was in about the end of first week uni in 5-year course, right, for medicine. And they said, "What's my name?" I said, "Oh, you're John." And I said, "What's the other guy?" And the other guy said, "What's my name?" I said, "Well, you're John too." And he said, "Don't you think it's weird that we both have the same name? Can't you pick the difference between us?" And as I looked, I could see that suddenly, while they were tall, young, slim Anglo males with red hair, one wore glasses and one didn't, and the one with glasses had a beard. And it sort of came to me, their faces sort of defuzzed, as it was like there was a cloud. And suddenly I could see the beard and the glasses.
So you don't recognise faces. It's like bricks in the wall. You know what? You would be a detective's nightmare if you were trying to pick someone out of a lineup.
I would be very bad as a detective. One thing I know about the detectives is that they're very good at recognising faces and usually names. Some of them, not all, have an ability to tell when people are lying.
Dr. Karl Krasinecki is with us here on Bonafide with Luke Boner, a man with a fascinating life. But I want to get to some current issues, if you can, because we'll do this from time to time on the podcast and we'll get to know you better. So shall we go on to some interesting stuff?
Oh, hit me with a big one, baby.
Not that discovering why belly button fluff is blue isn't important, but we'll move on. When I've spoken to you in the past, and I hope I've got this correct, you've always said to me that our days and years living on planet Earth are at a limit and that we're going to have to become a race that's able to travel through space. That one day, thousands, maybe millions of years down the track, I don't know, but one day we're going to have to be able to pack up and leave Earth. Is that pretty much how you feel?
We have to become a space-going race.
A space-going race, yeah.
Yeah, because we've got at the moment all of our eggs in one basket, which is that all the life that we know of in the entire universe at the moment is stuck on this planet, and therefore all the planet humans and their life support systems, the trees, etc., are stuck on this planet. We could get wiped out by a big rock. So back in 2015, the Halloween comet, or Halloween rock, which came past, I think, on the 31st of October, hence the name Halloween. It was 600 meters in diameter, and it missed the Earth by not much at all, just a bit further away than the moon. That's only, several, very short period of time, like many seconds in its flight path. And if it had hit, it could have wiped out, depending on where it landed, up to 80% of humanity. And yet, if it had 3 years to do something about it, the human race would have done something about it. But in this case, we had only 3 weeks. And roughly half of all the Earth-crossing asteroids, bigger than 600 meters, have been discovered. But at the rate we're discovering them and how it's gradually filtering down or dropping down, we know that we're roughly halfway through. If they're coming at us from the sun side of the orbit, rather than from outer space side of the orbit, then the chances of seeing them are very, very small. So we have to become a space-going race. And that means modifying humans, I reckon, rather than modifying the places that we go to.
So if we do have to go and live somewhere else, everyone's being focused on Mars at this point. Do you think it will be Mars, or do you think it will be somewhere a lot further away? And if it's answer B, are we going to have to develop a spacecraft that can take us somewhere at the speed of light, if not quicker? Is that possible?
Oh, so many things in one go. Okay, so firstly, with our current science, we can't go faster than the speed of light, and we can't even travel at the speed of light if we have mass. So a photon, a beam of light, travels at the speed of light, but it has no mass. Now, you remember about 15 years ago, there was a big hullabaloo about the Large Hadron Collider and the Higgs boson and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And that's a big collider where they get beams of hydrogen ions and take them up to a very, very high percentage of the speed of light, like 99.99.
They did this in Switzerland, didn't they?
Yeah, on the border of Switzerland and
that's
France.
right.
It's an underground ring, and they got big magnets and they use up a lot of electricity, and they slam these very high-speed beams of particles into each other, and then new particles are created, and they found in there, well, they were looking for a long time, the Higgs boson. You casually mentioned travelling at the speed of light, so this is dealing with that. The Higgs boson is the particle that gives you mass.
Right.
We know where your volume comes from because you've got a certain volume. If you go into a bathtub, water will flow over the edge. And we know where the volume comes from because you're made of atoms, and the atoms like to be a certain distance apart, not too far, not too close, and so they take up space. And we know where your colour comes from because light from a light bulb or the sun lands on you, and some of it's absorbed and some of it's reflected, and we pick that up with our eyes, blah, blah, blah. But your mass, that's a mystery, or was. Now we know where your mass comes from. The next stage is to apply, add money and physics, and we can then get rid of mass. So Luke Boner could still have all of your other characteristics. Your heart would pump, your lungs would move, but you'd have no mass. And then we accelerate you to the speed of light, deliver you to Mars in about 10, 20 minutes, depending, and then give you your mass back again. Do we have any idea how to do that? No. But back in the late 1800s, when Becquerel, the scientist, put some uranium salts on a photographic plate that was covered in paper, and the uranium salts gave out a radiation that fogged that photographic plate, that discovery gave us all we have today. Like, being able to talk to somebody from one side of the world to the other on your phone and see their picture, and quantum mechanics and X-rays and computers, all of it that came from that one single discovery. And we're now heading for another discovery, which will give us the ability to give us to travel faster, or to travel at the speed of light. Have we had that discovery yet? No.
There must be a lot of pressure to be able to do this if we are only here temporarily, and that travelling at the speed of light is the only way we're going to be able to go to a distant galaxy.
We're going to go faster than the speed of light, because so even just going to the nearest galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, which, by the way, is the furthest you can see with the human eye. If anybody ever asks you how far can you see with the naked eye, the answer is 2.5 million light years. Because on a cloudless, moonless night, if you know where to look, you can see this fuzzy thing in the sky, and that's the Andromeda galaxy, and it's 2.5 million light years away. And travelling at the speed of light will take you 2.5 million years to get there. So travelling at the speed of light is not good enough. We have to go faster. The breakthrough there, I reckon, that will let us travel faster than the speed of light is related to the fact that when the universe started up, there are a whole bunch of dimensions, 12, and 8 of them went away, and we don't know where they are. And if we can find those dimensions, we can jump into those dimensions maybe, and then travel at faster than the speed of light and get to the other end. Let me demonstrate with a sheet of paper.
Yes, please.
I happen to have a sheet of paper here.
I bet you do.
If you can find it. Here's my sheet of paper.
They all look alike. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. So if suppose I've got an X here.
Yeah.
And I want to travel to the other X over there.
Yes.
See the two X's?
Yes,
right?
I can.
I want to travel from one place to the other. Right. Now, normally the only way I can do it is by traveling across the paper. And that's in 2 dimensions. But if I can then bend the paper into the 3rd dimension, here I am bending it, kissing the 2 X's together, and then somebody at that X jumps out of their 2-dimensional sheet of paper into a 3rd dimension and then reappears. They jump out of here and they reappear over there. So they jump out of here and they reappear here because they're now kissing each other because we've bent space. That's how we could travel from here to there without covering the space in between.
So it's kind of like Star Trek, beam me up, beam me down, Scotty.
That is...
Oh,
hang on.
Okay.
Yes, it is, because the trouble with the beam me up, beam me down is that you have to get rid of all of the atoms at one place and reconstruct them at the other place.
That's right, yeah.
But in this case, we're actually moving from here to there as a complete entity. We're not destroying the atoms. There is another way of going faster than the speed of light, which is called the Alcubierre effect, where you shrink the space in front of you. So if you imagine, for example, you're in, say, Sydney, and you want to go to Perth, there's a couple of thousand kilometres of space between you. But if you shrink the space in front of you down to 0.5 metre, then you can travel from Sydney to Perth in virtually no time at all. And this is called the Alcubierre effect. But once again, we've got to develop the physics to understand the missing dimensions. So these are things that the human race will still do if we keep on staying together as a coherent society.
But can I just say this? Things do happen quickly, relatively quickly. If you think of the fact that my grandfather saw the invention of the motor car and man walk on the moon in one lifetime. That was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
Sure. Well, if you time it, say, from the Wright brothers having their first flight on the 17th of December 1903, then the 20th of July 1990, that's less than a human lifetime. For
1969.
1969, sorry. A person could see that in their lifetime from not being able to fly to go to the moon and back.
So anything's possible.
within limits, we need to get the physics right. So in this case, the Becquerel had started off an avalanche that led to something called computers being developed, so that with these very primitive computers, we could organise our navigation at very high speed to do all the calculations necessary to get us to the moon. Because if we didn't have computers, sure, we could do the calculations, but it would have taken much too long and we wouldn't have survived the journey.
Because to land precisely on the moon, and the room of computers that they use, which are now all available on your mobile phone. I mean, and because the Earth is turning and going around the sun, the moon is orbiting as well. And to get that timing right, the trajectory right, and to get the Apollo 11 and then eventually the Eagle pod to land, that's incredible mathematics, isn't it? It blows my mind.
At one stage, the command is given, tilt the spacecraft at so many degrees and fire this rocket for a certain amount of power for so many seconds. But the calculations behind that would have been many, many days, and they would have run out of food before they worked out the calculations.
You would have been able to do it. I'm sure you would have been able to do it. But anything's possible. And as Dr. Karl said, you got the Wright brothers having an experimental flight in 1903, man walking on the moon 20th of July 1969, and that's over a relatively short period of time. On another day, not today, but on another day, let's talk about the moon landing conspiracies. But we'll do that another time.
Sure.
While we're talking about distant galaxies, because this fascinates me, a team of astronomers have detected what they call the most promising signs to date of a possible biosignature, or signs of a past or present life linked to biological activity on an exoplanet named K2-18b. And everybody's very excited about this. Can you explain to us what K2-18b is and why people like yourself are going, ooh, ah?
Yeah, this could be the one. This could be announced on the 17th of April 2025. That could have been the first announcement of what might turn out to be life on another place that is in the universe that is not Earth. In this case as well, within our galaxy, it's only 124 light years away, which means that whatever's happening now that we see with our telescopes actually happened 124 years ago, because that image is carried to us only at the speed of light, not instantaneously. And what we've found is a chemical that may be the indicator of life. So let me just sort of run through that. How do they do it? So you've got this star there, which is a red dwarf, not particularly big, just a very small star, and it's not very bright. And this planet appears to be in the so-called habitable zone, where you can have liquid water. So it's not too far away, it's not too close. Just as a little aside, one problem here is that red dwarfs, unlike our star, which is a G-type star, a yellow star, green, not yellow, red dwarfs tend to be unstable and have little outbursts of radiation, which maybe could destroy life on its evolutionary path, or maybe it'll help it along. So we've got this red dwarf, and going around it is this planet. So we've got this telescope staring at the sun, this red dwarf, and it's measuring a certain brightness. And then every now and then, every 32 days, the brightness dips a little bit as this planet, which is 2.6 times bigger than the Earth, goes across the face of this red dwarf. So suddenly the light level drops down, so it's not so bright anymore. And okay, that makes sense. But it has an atmosphere, and some of the light emitted by the red dwarf goes through that atmosphere. We can then analyse what chemicals are in the atmosphere. Now, do you remember in the old days there used to be red sodium lights on highways, Luke? Do you remember the red sodium lights?
You mean the cat's eyes in the middle?
No, the illuminating the road. So up above you in the sky there were these red lights, these yellow lights. They were yellow instead of white.
No.
No? Okay, forget that one. Secondly, do you have a gas stove?
Yes.
Okay, drop some salt in it.
Yes.
So get the flame going as a blue flame and just get some little particles of salt
Yes.
and drop them in there and suddenly they'll light up yellow.
Okay.
Or if you've got barium, they'll light up red. And this is how they get their different colours in the fireworks. It turns out that every single element in the periodic table has its own characteristic colour. And so you can analyse the light for this colour and then see the element. Do you remember that album by Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon?
Dark Side of the Moon, the prism.
Yeah. So there's a prism and a beam of light comes in, spreads a little bit and then comes out the other side and then spreads more. And then you got a band maybe this big, but if you've got a proper spectroscope, you can spread that out to be a couple of meters across and you can look across that band of colours and you'll see these little spikes, and these spikes are indicative of certain elements. So, for example, helium is called helium because it was discovered in the sun, Helios, before it was discovered on Earth. We looked at the sun and we found that the light coming from the sun had these spikes in that if you ran the light through a glass prism, at one end you get these spikes, and we said we haven't seen that on Earth, and then later we discovered it associated with the gas coming out of oil wells. Okay, so what we did, we looked at this light that was travelling through the atmosphere of this giant planet, not giant, but say 2.6 times bigger than Earth, and we discovered the chemical dimethyl sulfide, which is the smell you smell of the beach. When you go to the beach and you say, oh my God, I love the smell of the beach, it must be ozone. It's not ozone. It's dimethyl sulfide, and it's given off by creatures in the ocean such as plankton. And what they've found is a signature of dimethyl sulfide in the atmosphere of this planet. Firstly, can you get dimethyl sulfide elsewhere than life? Not on Earth. On Earth, dimethyl sulfide appears only when it's generated by creatures in the ocean. And so what the astronomers are saying is that there's a possibility that this planet is covered by an ocean of water with a hydrogen atmosphere for various other reasons, and that this chemical is being made by the plankton that live in the ocean. But so there's a slight problem with that, in that we've looked at some comets and we've found dimethyl sulfide there, and they certainly don't have a thriving life system, but who knows how the chemical got there. But if you assume that dimethyl sulfide is made only by living creatures, such as plankton in the ocean, then there's a good chance we've discovered life there. But then there's another problem. When you look at the actual scientific paper, there's a graph there, and they're looking in the infrared. So we look in visible light. Our eyes work from 0.4 to 0.7 of a nanometer of a micron. A micron is a millionth of a meter. So at the blue end, we've got blue light, which is 0.4 of a micron in wavelength, and red is 0.7. And here we're in the infrared, we're up at around 7 microns. And if you look at the curve, it's kind of bumpy, and it definitely looks like the signature of dimethyl sulfide, but the error bars are fairly large. Now, let me introduce you to the concept of error bars. When a politician stands up and says that this project will cost $45 million, what I want is error bars, which is where they say this project will cost $45 million and there's a 95% confidence that the price will be somewhere between 40 and 150.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, I want a 95% confidence limit.
Okay.
You're right.
I think you're right.
And they always go over. So in this particular case here, the error bars are fairly large. And so the chances that this is a false finding, that this is just a coincidence, are 3 in 1,000. And the scientists wanted to be better than that. They wanted to be 6 out of 10 million. And so it's not yet fully accepted by the scientific community as a proper finding because the error bars are still too large. And so they've got to get more readings, either with the same telescope or a different telescope, or people interpreting it again to see if we come up with greater significance. But if it does turn out that there is dimethyl sulfide in the atmosphere of that planet, there's a good chance it was manufactured by life, and this could be the first signs of life not on Earth. Not life smart enough to make TV shows like Married at First Sight, but life intelligent enough to have babies. It's a fairly low standard.
Dr. Karl Krasnicki is with us on Bonafide with Luke Boner. Dr. Karl, our ancestors have always believed that there's life out there somewhere, aliens. Some people even believe that human beings were first put here by aliens.
Mm-hmm.
If we do discover an intelligent life form, not just a fungus that grows at the bottom of a pond, but if we actually find intelligent life out there somewhere, how is that going to change us?
We can learn from them and they can learn from us and we can help each other along.
But if they were intelligent, wouldn't they have made themselves known to us by now? Do you think they already have? Do you think there's...
Do I think they have? Well, go to Wikipedia and look up the Fermi paradox. So Enrico Fermi was this brilliant physicist who was involved with making the first artificial nuclear reactor on planet Earth during the Second World War. Underneath I think it was a basketball stadium in Chicago University. And one day they're working on the atom bomb about a decade later, and they're having lunch in the cafeteria. I think it was Los Alamos, I'm not sure, but they were working on the atom bomb. And suddenly, after a break in the conversation, he just said, "Where are they?" And everybody knew what he meant. The universe is very old. If there is intelligent life elsewhere in our galaxy, which is 100,000 light years across, after, say, 100 million years, they would have reached us. You know, if they're traveling fairly slowly,
that's what I reckon.
or a billion years. And our galaxy, the Milky Way, is 11 billion years old, and yet we have no hard proof of aliens being here. And so that's called the Fermi paradox. If there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, bearing in mind the universe is quite old, they would have had time to get here. Where are they? And if you go through the article in Wikipedia, you find a whole bunch of reasons, ranging from they wipe themselves out to when they get to a certain stage of knowledge and power, and their lesser sides destroy themselves with their advanced technology, all the way up to they are here and we're in a zoo and they're just making sure that nobody else pokes sticks at us through the bars of the jail that we're in. And when we advance enough with our compassion and our knowledge, we'll be admitted to the International Galactic Federation.
Okay, but what about the Roswell conspiracy? Is it a conspiracy or are they hiding something?
Okay, so go back to Roswell, and I think it was around 1954, and the finding was of by a farmer, of a whole bunch of weird materials, some mostly soft and shiny, but stuff that he'd never seen before, this farmer, and so a few bits of hard stuff. And he reported it to the local newspaper, and they said UFOs found in Roswell, and then suddenly the military kicked in, and then there was a big cover-up. And then later there was a video released showing some medical doctors doing surgery or autopsies on these aliens. Okay, so does that kind of ring a bell?
It does.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Right, okay. So firstly, at that time, just think back to the time, 1954. So it's about 8-9 years after the Second World War, and the Cold War was happening at that time. And so atom bombs were a big thing. Okay, here's the thing for you. I won't ask you a question, I'll just tell you the answer.
Yeah.
The number of air bases licensed to carry nuclear weapons in the entire known planet was 1, and that was at Roswell. Right? So, okay, so putting nuclear weapons on aeroplanes and then flying them somewhere and dropping them, you got to shrink the weapons down to get them small enough to carry, and so it was a whole big deal. And so Roswell was the only place, but at that time, the United States Air Force didn't exist. It was still part of the United States Army. Just keep that as a background factor. Now, at that time, there was a project where they were listening for the Russians developing nuclear weapons. And when I say listening, they put microphones on high-altitude balloons going up to 100,000 feet. And this was it was called... Is it Majestic 12? I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it, but it's all there in Wikipedia. And then if you go back and so what the farmer had found was the remnants of a balloon that had not managed to go to orbit properly, made of unusual materials like, alfoil and stuff like that. That's very specialized material making these high altitude balloons. And then the conspiracy theory kicked in, and all these documents appeared dated with the headline of Roswell Air Force Base. And then when it was pointed out to them that the Air Force didn't exist as an entity at that time, suddenly the documents reappeared with United States Army Air Corps on them and the Roswell Air Force Base taken off them. And then when you go back to the actual autopsy that they do on the alien, so the autopsy is not done the right way. When you hold scissors, Dr. Luke, how do you hold scissors?
Were you supposed to hold them by the
thumb and the forefinger, yeah?
Oh, I thought you were talking about when you're running with scissors. You never run with scissors.
No. Here's a question. Yes. When you hold scissors, you normally go thumb and forefinger or like this.
Yeah.
And so with the smaller hole that the surgical scissors have, an ordinary person, a non-doctor, will pick them up and use them like that, thumb and forefinger. But a medical person who's been trained in surgery will hold them with the thumb and the middle finger. And the advantage of that is that you're working with the patient and you're going snippy, 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 and then you need to use your fingers. You take your thumb out. See, I've got my middle finger in there.
Yeah.
You take the thumb out. You swivel it around.
Yes.
You then hold it with your little finger, the scissors, under your wrist. Yes. And then you've got a bunch of fingers left where you can operate on a patient. Every medical doctor in the world who does surgery and every pathologist holds the scissors with a thumb and the middle finger, but not in the video. The supposed medical doctors who did the autopsy held the scissors like a non-surgeon with the thumb and the first finger.
All right, you know me. I am definitely not one for rabbit food, but these new Power Bee Bite Bars from Nature Bee, they are the real deal. Crunchy chocolate caramel, peanut, honey, choc chip, proper flavors, real flavors. And here's the kicker. Each one's got 5 grams of protein plus Nature Bee's famous Power Pollen to give you that natural lift. And they're just $14.95 a box. Perfect when you're on the go between meals or need a pick-me-up on the road. It's a snack that actually fuels you, not just fills you. I chuck one in with my Power Pollen capsules in the morning, and I'm sorted for the day. You can grab a 6-month supply of Power Pollen for just $160, and they'll throw in an extra month and 2 bars of their famous pollen and honey soap for free. So if you want to level up your wellness routine, grab a box of Power Bee Bite Bars with your next order of Power Pollen. The links are in the description right now.
And I've actually taken out an appendix, and as a medical doctor, and when you do the cut down, mate, it's nothing like the anatomy books. You just do the cut down, and then you think there's this white membrane everywhere. There's this fascia, and you have to do what they call a blunt dissection, and you sort of push it out of the way, and you work your way down, and then finally you see something, and you say, "What's that? Is that the appendix?" And then the people who are looking after me, making sure I didn't do something bad, said, "Yeah, that's the appendix." And, mate, in the video, they sort of go, cut, oh, here's a kidney, here's a spleen, here's a, it's like they're plastic bottles. And if you do the interviews, I've seen the interviews with the people who do Hollywood special effects, and they said, yeah, that was one of ours. And you can tell from when they bend the leg, they only bend it to a certain point because then it suddenly crinkles. And they're the sort of organs that we make for horror movies.
It's fascinating stuff. You were a medical doctor. You actually took out someone's appendix. You know what would impress me if you performed your own appendectomy? That would be impressive.
That's been done.
We'll save that for another day.
Once. Okay, I'll tell you. In Antarctica at the South Pole. Oh, no, a Russian doctor did to himself when his appendix went bad, and he got the techs to be his assistants, and he did it with a mirror. He took out his own appendix.
No anaesthetic.
He would have had local anaesthetic, but not general anaesthetic, because he was the only one who had the knowledge to know what to remove and how to remove it and sew it up and fix it up afterwards.
Performing your own circumcision, that'd be interesting too, wouldn't it?
I prefer to keep onto my body parts unless absolutely
Leave
necessary.
your body parts until it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Dr. Karl Kruszenicki.
Gee, we get a great response when you come on the podcast, so thanks for giving us another crack at this, because there's a never-ending world of questions out there that we need answered.
That's right. The saying among the physicists is that it's not the answer that gets you the Nobel Prize, It's the question.
Is that right?
Because once you've got a question, all you have to do is apply the essential things. Lab coat, coffee, people, and time. But having the insight to see the question. So I'll give you an example. Have you ever looked through that thing they used to have in schools called a light microscope, just like an ordinary microscope that would use light?
Right, no.
You never looked through a microscope?
I've looked through a microscope. I don't know if I looked through a light microscope.
Well, you can have electron microscopes or light microscopes.
Listen, I was at school so long ago, rainbows were still in black and white.
I was at school so long ago that my first job in in primary school, was because I was obsessive, was given the job of walking around with a bottle of ink and filling up the ink wells.
Yeah. Well, we had desks that had the holes there. So when I was in primary school, the desks we had with the lift-up lid and the groove at the top that held your ruler, but the hole for the inkwell was still in the desk where the ink bottle used to go. But I didn't. We had kids at my school that had learnt with the fountain pen, the old-fashioned ink pen. But here's a bit of trivia for you, and I know that you already know this, but the holes for the ink bottle were always on the right, because you had to write right-handed to drag the pen across the paper. If you were a lefty, you pushed it and you smudged. And you had to have this smudging paper. Now, my father was naturally left-handed. He went to Parramatta High back in the 1918 or whenever it was.
First World War.
And, well, he turned 18 in 1945, which is when he had to do his national service. And they dropped 2 bombs in Japan, and he was saved from going to New Guinea.
Second World War.
Second World War. But anyway, and he was a natural left-hander, and he got smacked, and he was hit into submission to writing right-handed so that he wouldn't smudge.
You could buy special pens that have a curved nib. At the very tip there was a ball, but it was very difficult to manufacture and they were very expensive, and most schools didn't have them. Getting back to the question and the microphone.
And I was going to say one more thing. The Americans in the space race spent millions and millions of dollars on developing a pen that could write upside down in zero gravity. You know what the Russians did?
Tell me.
They used a lead pencil.
Now, do you know that you've just said 2 incorrect things to our audience?
Okay, it's an urban myth, is it?
They are urban myths.
Go on, correct me then.
So firstly, the amount of money that NASA spent developing the Fisher space pen was 0.
Oh.
It was developed entirely by the Fisher company.
Okay. Not the Bic company.
Bic is French, so this is an American company.
Yes.
And he came up with the idea of, during the space race, of a pen that would work in effectively no gravity. Because what happens in your normal ballpoint pen, you've got a cylinder, and in that cylinder is ink, and then at the bottom is a little ball, and then as you roll the ball across the paper, the tolerances in that ball are just amazing. Little diversion here. During a war, one of the most important things that a country does is make sure it can make ball bearings. That's really high technology. The tolerances are amazing. And it picks up, back to their story, it picks up some ink and then leaves it on the table, on the paper, but it relies on gravity to bring the ink down. And so in the microgravity of space, it's not zero gravity. In fact, I'll just leave this as a question for the audience. At the altitude that the astronauts travel at, the 400 kilometres up, the strength of the Earth's gravitational field is 95% of what it is down here on the ground.
Right.
So how come they float? Okay, I'll leave that question for them. They can ring back in with our answer for next week, okay?
Okay, yeah,
so
Luke Boner Radio Guy at gmail.com. Go.
Microscope. So you've looked through an ordinary microscope with your eyeball and you've seen stuff. Have you ever had the experience of you're looking at stuff and you think, you put your eye to the microscope and somebody's adjusted the focus wrong, and you look down and you see this blurry stuff?
Yeah.
And it's sort of jittering around a bit, and then you just adjust the focus, you rotate this big knob, and then bingo, you can see what you're looking at, a red blood cell or a hair or whatever it is. But Einstein looked down at a microscope. Like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people before him, and he saw this stuff jittering around. And he stopped and he said, what is jittering around and why? And by answering that question, he did that in 1905. he wrote 5 little papers, each one of which could have won a Nobel Prize. And one of them was based on the fact that he looked down a microscope, did a few simple, wait for it, primary school calculations.
Yes.
Just addition and subtraction, multiplication and division.
For Einstein, what's a primary school calculation?
You can't do addition and subtraction?
Very basic.
What's 4 and 5?
Look, there's no need to go into that.
Okay, moving right along.
9.
So using just ordinary primary school mathematics and what he
Yes.
saw with his eye,
Yeah.
he proved in 1905 that atoms exist. What was happening was that molecules of water, H2O, which looked like a little boomerang, but they didn't know that back then. They hadn't even proved that atoms existed. They suspected that they existed, but he proved that something of this certain size was jittering around and hitting particles of dust. It's called Brownian motion. Look it up in Wikipedia. And so that's an example of where, to get back on our multi-layered nested levels of discussion before we even got to the question from the audience, it's the question that's more important. So everybody can look down a microscope and you see the stuff jittering around and you go, oh, hell, that's messy. But instead, if you ask the question of what is jittering and what's forcing it to jitter, then you can get a Nobel Prize.
So it's the question more than the answer.
Exactly. Anybody can come up with, not anybody, but once you've been given a question, you just apply what you need. But it's having the insight to look at the world and say, why is it this way instead of that way? Getting back to our question from the audience, we had one.
Just before we go to the question from the audience, our loving audience.
The second thing, sorry, go on. But I forgot to tell you about the second thing you did wrong, but go on.
The Russians using a lead pencil.
Yeah, okay. Instead of using an ink, he used a special thixotropic or anti-thixotropic fluid, Fisher. Now, have you ever taken the kids or the nieces or the nephews to the beach, and to keep them amused, you get a little plastic bucket, or don't use plastic, it's bad for microplastics, you get a little metal bucket, okay, rusty, okay, you get a stainless steel bucket, okay, we got there, right? You get a little bucket, right? Okay, you with me, Luke? Stay with me, Luke, stay with me.
I'm here.
Okay, and then you put some sand in it.
Yeah.
And some water.
Yes.
And then you play with it.
Yes.
And then what you notice is that you can move your hand slowly through the sand and water mixture, but not quickly. If you try to move your hand quickly, it freezes up. No, it doesn't freeze, it solidifies. So that one of them, that's either thixotropic or anti-thixotropic, but the other side is something that when you apply pressure, turns into a liquid. And Fisher put that stuff into the Fisher Space Pen. It's a paint. It's not a normal ink. But then how do you force it down? Wait for it.
Yes.
With 2 atmospheres of nitrogen. When you carry a Fisher Space Pen, you're carrying a miniature little hand grenade in your chest. And I've got one.
Can you show it to us?
Sure. So I actually have here a Fisher Space Pen. And this is the minimal model. And you pull it out like so. And here you have it. And then when I unscrew it, you'll see something. Now, let me try and get the writing the right way round. There in Boulder City, Fisher Space Pen. Can we get that there? Fisher Space Pen. Fisher Space Pen.
Look at that.
Now, the thing about the Fisher Space Pen is that not only will it write uphill, it will also write underwater. And so, therefore, I have special paper. You know how paper is normally made from carbon atoms, like trees?
Yeah.
I've got paper that's made from rock, silicon atoms. And so I can write on paper underwater. And should I happen to be having a shower and have a brilliant thought, I can then write that brilliant thought. It also involves having a shower, wearing a shirt with my Fisher Space Pen and special paper, which hasn't happened yet. But one day, if it happens, I'll be able to write down that brilliant thought.
So if you're drowning and you happen to have a sheet of this special paper, you could write, please, someone save me, I'm drowning.
And send it off.
And then hope it washes up on shore.
And I'll just go into hibernation mode. So getting back to the Fisher Space Pen. So it exists. It was done entirely by all the costs of development were carried out entirely by the Fisher Pen Company. Then they offered to sell it to NASA at a discount. So instead of paying, I think if it was normally, I'm making up some numbers, but this is the ratio. If it was $4, if NASA ordered a whole bunch, they could buy them for $3.50. So when you said that NASA spent millions of dollars developing a pen that would write in space, that is 100% wrong. They did not spend any money at all, and in fact they got a discount because they bought it in bulk. Now the second incorrect thing you said was that the Russians used lead pencils.
Lead pencil, that's what I heard.
The old illusory truth. Yeah. So yes and no, that's partially correct. Now the trouble is when you're writing with a lead pencil, by the way, you know where the lead pencil originally came from? Do you remember using at school when you were in kindergarten the really good coloured pencils if your family was wealthy?
Yes.
The Derwent ones?
Lakeland.
Lakeland, were they even better than Derwent, were they?
I don't know. We had Lakeland.
Well, we had Derwent. Well, we didn't have Derwent. We couldn't afford it. So, but Derwent was a good one. And in the 1600s or 1700s, I've written a story about this in my 25th book or something, a tree got blown over by a storm around Derwent in the United Kingdom.
Right.
And in the branches, in the roots of the tree was this strange black stuff. And that was the first discovery of graphite. And that's, before then we didn't know that carbon could exist as graphite. So carbon atoms, the good thing about carbon atoms in the human body and in physiology is you've got a single carbon atom that can have 4 bonds sticking out of it, 4 potential ways to join to something else, which means you can have a virtual infinity of chemicals in the human body. And in a diamond, they're arranged in a pyramid, but in graphite, the carbon atoms, just 3 of the bonds just join to each other in a sheet. And every now and then, there's one going down to the next level. So it's like sheets of paper that sit on top of each other. They're sheets of carbon atoms, and they slide over each other. And so that makes graphite a good lubricant, but also a good thing to write with, because you write on paper and some of it slides off. But besides some of it ending up on the paper, some of it ends up in the air. And when it ends up in the air, we got gravity. And it falls to the ground. But in orbit, it doesn't fall to the ground. It just floats around. Yeah. And it ends up going into the electronics of the machines and killing the electronics.
Yeah, you can't have that.
So the Soviets tried to use pencils, but it was too dangerous.
Yeah.
And also, it could end up, from time to time, end up in the eyes of the astronauts. And there are some unconfirmed reports that people had to abort missions early because they had an infection of the eyeball. So as soon as and this was open in America, as soon as it was announced that the Fisher Space Pen Company was, Fisher Company was selling pens to NASA, the Russians said, yeah, we'll buy a couple of thousand as well.
Anyway,
question from the audience.
This is some feedback from our
beloved
treasured audience. We have one listener, and he's written in, and he says the millennial forgot to write the name down, but it is our listener. But they know who they are,
and we love that single person wherever they are in the world.
Without them, where would we be?
Talking to each other, which is a lot of fun. Lay it on me, man.
Okay. Chuck Yeager was the first person to break the sound barrier in the Bell X-1, reaching a speed of 700 miles an hour, Mach 1.06. This happened on October 14, 1947. This historic flight, which occurred at an altitude of 45,000 feet, marked a major milestone in aviation history and paved the way for supersonic flight. And we had the first commercial speed of sound aircraft in Concorde in 1976. And in 2003, it suddenly stopped. The question is, why did it stop? Now, Concorde crashed. It had a terrible accident. And I understand that Concorde also commercially was very difficult to run at a profit because it could only take so many passengers, and the seats were incredibly expensive. There was also problems flying over vast areas of land because of the sonic boom, so they couldn't fly at supersonic speed for most of its journey, particularly the where they wanted to go, which was usually London to New York, and going over most of Europe. They couldn't fly at supersonic speed because of the sonic boom. Have I got that wrong?
I think that if you go to the United Kingdom, you'll see that what's between it and the United States is ocean.
They couldn't fly across Europe.
Well,
and they couldn't fly across they couldn't fly from the west coast to the east coast because of the supersonic boom. Anyway,
they couldn't fly over land.
Most of it's the Atlantic.
Yeah. Flying over water was okay, but flying over land was bad.
Yeah, but it was also frightfully expensive, and they only had limited amount of seats on Concorde. You couldn't fit that many people on. And it had that terrible accident. A Concorde, from memory, was a dual operation between the Brits, British Airways, and Air France. It was a British-French collaboration, wasn't it?
Yep, and it was an amazing thing, being the first one of its type. And then the Russians stole the plans and came up with the Tu-144, which they called the Concordsky, which looked almost identical. And they actually managed to get it flying earlier. But then, while it didn't crash, it was hideously noisy. And even with earphones on and earbuds blocking it, so it had external and internal noise protection devices. It was still incredibly noisy and unreliable. And so they used it internally across Russia, going across to from Moscow to Siberia, just to prove they could do it. And they withdrew it from service because it was really noisy. They had to go to the Mark II. Okay, so first thing, Chuck Yeager was not the first person to go faster than the speed of sound. During the Second World War, some propeller aircraft apparently, in a dive, went faster than the speed of sound, but in no way was it controlled, and they were, in most cases, they died. Occasionally, they lived. But Chuck Yeager did it controlled with the X-1 Bell rocket, which had 4 rocket engines, and it was just optimized for trying to get through the sound barrier, and they did it. Read the book, The Right Stuff. It'll take you through the history of that. So why did they stop flying? Well, have you heard the word payload? Well, being obsessive guy that I am, firstly, I read the journal Aviation Week and Space Technology, which comes out every week, which is otherwise known as Megadeth Weekly, because every week they come up with new and unusual ways to kill 1 million people that weren't thought of last week. All right. And I got access to being a member. I paid money. Their archives, and I went looking through the archives and going back to 1950, 40, 30, 20. I saw this advertisement for an aeroplane in the 1920s, and it used the word, not payload, it used 2 words, paying load. So if you were shifting stuff around and it had weight and you were limited on an airplane, you talked about, well, what's the paying load, meaning not the weight of the engines or the fuel, but the amount of money the amount of weight that will give us money.
Yes.
Right. And so that got shortened down to payload. So money is behind it, and they can't continue to operate at a continuous loss. By the way, if you want to talk about AI, every single AI company, and there's about 24 of them, is operating at a massive loss. And the only way they can pay their weekly wages is they go to people and say, hey, Luke, you got a few spare tens of dollars. Please invest in us. And you invest in them, and they don't tell you you'll never get your money back. No. So getting back to payload. So you were dead right when you said that it was not commercially successful. It was very expensive to run, and they were doing it mainly as a glory project, as a sort of prestige project. We spent all this time and money doing it. And in the meantime, they were working in the background to try and, one, change the laws so they could make sonic booms over land. But the trouble was that was really noisy and could break windows. Or number 2, work out a way to redesign the plane for Concorde Mark II, which they could fly over land. And they were heading down both these pathways with not a lot of success, because they didn't have massively fast computers like we have today. And in 2000, was it 2003 that the Concorde crashed? Was that the year? Something like around then. And what happened was that there was a bit of debris on the runway as it was taking off. And it sucked the debris into the engines and hit the fuel tank as well. And so it caught fire and blew up. And so that kind of broke their heart. It was sort of like the kiss of death. And in the background, all that other effort to try and change the laws so they could make sonic booms over land or design a new one that would not have such a big sonic boom didn't happen. So that's why we haven't gone faster than sound, because it's just not commercially viable. You can make the plane, you can fly people there, but you have to say, okay, you want to get there in 2 hours. So what? Yeah. Hang on, London to New York, what's that about? I'll have a guess, say 6 hours. Okay, instead of 6 hours, you can do it in 3. Okay, instead of paying $4,000, you want to pay $20,000 for 3 hours? Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's generally not worth it. So all we're looking at now is Boom, B-O-O-M, a company, has actually tested with NASA a plane that's got a very cleverly designed shape so that the sonic boom is really, really minimal. And instead of breaking your windows, it's sort of like, oh, did you hear something? Yeah, I thought I heard something. So it's not available yet. They're heading down the pathway of making it available. They're working on it. And there's a roughly 50-50 chance that the first models will be made as private jets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For people who are wealthy enough to afford the prestige of having a private jet that can go supersonic. And then, but there's also the 50-50 chance that it might be rolled out to people who are prepared to pay for it on a commercial level as opposed to private jets.
But they look, with technology leaping ahead as it does, I mean, once upon a time, a 40-inch widescreen flat TV cost $20,000, and now look at them. Surely that will become commercially viable. Incidentally, I'll let you do an edit here, Kelsey, just so that you get, because I know you'll want to get this right. The Air France flight 4590 Concorde crashed July 25, 2000.
And so they ran it for 3 more years before they gave up.
Yeah, July 25. Killed everyone. Yeah, 109 people. Everyone on board died, and people on the ground died as well. But they kept going. Well, I remember it was a beautiful looking plane, and the nose used to come down because with the nose straight ahead, the pilots couldn't see the tarmac. So they developed a movable nose that actually bent down so that they could see where they were going while they were taxiing. It was a good looking thing.
Yeah, and so what they're doing with the Boom, I believe, the new version is of supersonic, is using cameras because now they're reliable enough. And of course, if the electronics goes down, the plane just falls out of the sky like a bunch of car keys.
Yeah, funny because I got a Kia hybrid taxi. It was a taxi, and it didn't have a rear windscreen because with the seats up and full of luggage, you can't see at the back. But where the rear vision mirror is, it's as clear as anything, and it's a camera. You see, you weren't actually looking out the back, but they had a rear vision mirror in front of you, but it was actually footage from the reverse camera. It was very good. It was very clever.
So what we're looking at here is something that doesn't apply to supersonic planes, which is economies of scale. So instead of just making 100 or 200 Concordes Mark II, you're making thousands. Or hundreds of thousands, or millions, or tens of millions.
Hopefully not Boeing.
Boeing did a big sale of 177 jets recently to somewhere in the Middle East, and apparently that's a huge number. So you don't get the economies of scale until to make things cheaper, until you start making thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So your phone has amazing technology. So as an example, we're just getting off this topic here, so I'll try to come back to our topic, whatever it is. But do you remember in the old days that a radio that you'd listen to at home was maybe the size, if it was a fancy transistor one, like the size of a book or something?
Yeah.
And before that, if you used valves, it was the size of a microwave. Well, at first year university, just to teach us the old technology, we built a radio out of valves and it was the size of a microwave. In your smartphone today, there's 5 radio transmitter receivers, each of them smaller than the head of a pin. So you've got one for voice communication with a cell phone tower, another one for data communication with a cell phone tower, another one for Wi-Fi with your home network, another radio transmitter, another one for Bluetooth with your home network, and another one to pick up the GPS satellites going some 10, 20,000 kilometres above broadcasting their signal. And so you pick up that signal directly, you don't transmit back to them, and you work out where you are. And so there's also accelerometers in your phone so if it gets dropped to the ground and you take it into the shop with a broken glass and say, oh, the glass just broke, and they look back at the record and they say, there was a period of 0G where you must have dropped it. No. Yes, you did drop it.
Yeah. Tell me this. When an aeroplane is flying on autopilot, is that AI? And are we going to get to the point where you won't actually... Would you happily get into an aircraft and fly anywhere without a pilot? Because they're talking about driverless cars, right? Are we going to get to the stage where we actually won't need people in the cockpit and the whole thing will just be done through AI? And would you feel comfortable with that? Are we heading that way?
Okay. Now, here's a cynical quote about AI that we have today. And I've got this from the Privacy Forum. This was called Privacy Forum. It's at vortex.com. Check it out. Move it along. And here's a quote. While it is not 100% the case, comma, it is, claims Lauren, it is essentially accurate to say that the LLM, generative AI system, so LLM means large language model, generative means that it's just a prediction machine. It's just a probability machine. It just predicts the next words. That's all we got today. That the LLM, generative AI systems, are being used, mainly, wait for it, as job and education killing machines. Right, and so there's a lot of people being fired from voiceover work, and he says that they're mainly designed to ultimately enrich big tech CEOs and other billionaires. Well, fair enough. The billionaires are so unhappy; they need a bit more money. I'm being cynical there, both in terms of money and power, while undermining ordinary people. Yes, because people are being fired and they don't care, and society at large as well. Then he goes out on a bit of a limb while enhancing the rise of fascism. Well, that's a fairly provocative quote, but let's just talk about what AI is today. AI today hallucinates like crazy. And so there's cases at the big end of town where the wealthy people pay lots of money to lawyers to make sure they win this law case. Because remember, it is totally true to say that everybody is innocent until they have been proven to run out of money. And so long as you got money, you can keep on fighting and winning. And so at the big end of town, you spend huge amounts of money, thousands of dollars per hour to the lawyers, who you as a big company with no morals trust to do the right thing being win for you. And what they've been doing is getting AI to write their submissions. And there have been cases, increasingly frequently, where the big end of town lawyers, they put in a brief to the judge and they quote a precedent, and the precedent says, oh, that's interesting, I've never heard of that precedent, looks it up, it doesn't exist. They're telling lies, and there have been cases where lawyers have been disbarred. Secondly, last weekend, the Chicago Sun put out a list of a couple of dozen books to read over summer. 2/3 of them didn't exist. The whole article was written by AI. Thirdly, if you go and ask for medical advice of an AI, you'll get a mixture of truth and lies. So to put it into perspective, an AI today is generative. Now, I'm going to say the two words, generative and general. I'll give you an example of general intelligence, which is what you and I have. Okay? So I'm in my final...
Speak for yourself.
Well, we all have general intelligence. Like you're sort of trying to make a cup of tea, but then there's somebody ringing on the phone and your child is trying to stick a very sharp knife into the PowerPoint. And you sort of prioritise which one you're going to deal with first, right? So I'm in my final year surgical exam, a short case. Yeah. So you're walking down past these patients, and if a patient has one foot like that, they're lying on a bed and the other foot like that, you say, oh, I believe this patient has a fractured neck of femur. Thank you very much. Please see Mr. Brown. And they don't give you a hint of whether you're right or wrong. So this is an example of general AI. So they say, can you examine Mr. Smith? So I say, hello, Mr. Smith, how are you? I shake hands with him. And I say, what line of work are you in, Mr. Smith? And he says, I'm a chippy. And I turn to the examiners and I say, I believe Mr. Smith has cancer of the prostate. And the way I did that was I shook hands with him, being polite. And by the way, you can diagnose about 100 things just by looking at the hands and the fingernails. And if you shake hands with somebody and these fingers, instead of going across, are slightly angled down, you think, oh, you might have a bit of rheumatoid disease. And, you know a lot. You learn a lot when you're a doctor. And so I shook hands with him and he had a strong handshake. I thought, wow, he's got a strong handshake. Here, he might be a tradie. But his hands were incredibly soft, like a baby's. Not an office worker, but another degree of softness, like a baby. And the only tradies that I know of that have strong hands that are really soft are sheep shearers from the lanolin, and masseurs from the oil.
Oil.
And so I say, So I'm thinking to myself, very strong, but very soft, abnormally soft. What line of work are you in, Mr. Smith? I'm a chippy. How does a chippy get soft hands? By taking feminizing hormones. Why is he taking feminizing hormones? Because he's got cancer of the prostate. Next patient, please. That's general intelligence, right? That's what doctors are taught, to use the data to come up with to jump across. Generative is you just predict the next word. So if I say the word I, as in I, me, mine, almost certainly the next word will be am. It'll never be ham, like that delicious meat from a pig. And so what we have in AI today is fancy probability machines that don't like to say no, and they will make up stuff and hallucinate. And as of last week, roughly 50 to 70% of everything that you see on the internet was generated by AI. And by the time we get to the end of the year 2025, it'll be 90%. And there'll be lies in it. And so you shouldn't trust it. We're now having to go back to basics where critical thinking will be the last line of defense. So using an AI on an aeroplane, no thank you, I'd rather have a human.
We should talk more about AI on our future chats. There's a lot more. I wanted to talk to you about the universe. I wanted to talk to you about the future of space travel. We have talked about traveling at the speed of light, and we'll do that down the track. But maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. We were talking with the vice captain of the Man Cave, Adam McDonald, about toys. And I have a Thunderbird 2 here that was sent in from another valued listener, which means we have two listeners.
So that was can fly horizontally but also vertically from the Thunderbirds, the TV show, BBC.
Thunderbird 1 could fly vertically. But then Thunderbird 1 always leveled out and then flew horizontally. This is Thunderbird 2 that used to take off with a pad behind it like that. And it only flew horizontally, and it carried pods inside. One of the most famous pods that it carried was Thunderbird 4, which was the submarine that was piloted by Gordon. But this is Alan. This is Thunderbird 2. Scotty flew Thunderbird 1. But whenever they spoke to each other on the radio, they always finished by saying FAB.
FAB?
FAB, Scotty, FAB, Alan. And someone has asked, do you know what FAB actually stands for in Thunderbirds? Because it's affirmation I received the message. Yes, message received and understood, but what does FAB mean?
Well, I was with the Australian Army in Afghanistan in 2013, and I used some of my training from being in the cadets. And in normal radio transmissions, you, at the end of each communication, say the word over, which means that I have finished talking, I'm now happy to listen to you. And when you come to the very end, you don't say over and out, you say out. And out means I'm not going to talk anymore, I'm switching off my radio. I do not know what FAB stands for. Give me a hint. I'm guessing you might have looked it up. What is it?
No, I'd have. It's something that Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, the brains behind Brains, he was also in Thunderbirds. He designed and made all those fantastic aircraft. No, there's just conjecture out there conjecture. No one actually really knows. Some people think it's short for fabulous because it was made in the 60s, fab. But they always finished, they didn't say over, they said FAB, which meant message received and understood, but we don't know what the FAB means, or what it stands for.
Well, firstly, I do know.
Oh, hang on, Kelsey. We have feedback from it. We've got 3 listeners.
Hurrah, 3? Where'd the other 2 come from?
I was just saying that someone knows, the person who asked this question, he knows. He contacted the people that created Thunderbirds, and he wanted to put it out there before he told us what the answer was. So we're going to get him on, I'm sure, on this episode, and we'll find the answer. But someone does know the answer to this.
Allegedly.
Well,
so I can't wait for this listener to get back to us with what the answer is. I thought you might know.
Providing they're not lying to us and they have actually contacted the people, and we need the chain of command to prove that they have actually contacted them. But I'm trusting the integrity of our fine audience to not lie to us. So I'm kind of liking fab simply as something that was hip in the day. Yeah. And by the way, these words come and go, but do you know one word that has never changed over the last century in its meaning?
What?
Cool. Cool has always stayed the same. So Fab, I'm guessing that that's a reasonable conjecture, that it could be correct. But one thing I do know about the Brits is that they tend to use the word brilliant to mean yes. We'll meet for a cup of tea tomorrow at 3:00. Brilliant, instead of the word yes. So I can fully understand they'd be happy to say things like fab, which is shorter than fabulous.
Because Enid Blyton used to say that all the time. Oh, shall we go and have lunch now? Brilliant thinking, Julian. You really have grown up into a wonderful young man. Old Timmy, don't be so licky. We're going to have lots of ham, bags of tomatoes and lashings of ginger beer. Enid Blyton. Anyway, Dr. Karl, once again, an absolute pleasure. Need a post-show pick-me-up? I know what I'm grabbing. Nature Bee's new Power Bee Bite Bars, packed with protein, boosted with pollen, and they're bloody tasty too. And they're just $14.95 a box. Pair them with your Power Pollen capsules. You're going to thank me later. You can grab a 6-month supply of Power Pollen for just $160, and they'll throw in an extra month and 2 bars of their famous pollen and honey soap for free. Nature Bee's got everything you need to keep energized all day, every day. Do not wait. The ultimate wellness routine is just a click away. Head to the description now.